Whistleblowing has become one of the most contentious subjects in policing in recent weeks. It has been discussed at every level of the service and by MPs in Parliament. One of the people that's found himself at the centre of the drama of whistleblowing is former Metropolitan Police Officer James Patrick, who recently tendered his resignation. I'm Cliff Caswell, the editor of PoliceOracle.com, and James is with me today. James, I wondered if I could start by asking you a little bit about your time in policing and some of the highs and lows.
Yeah, I joined the police on the 10th of May 2004. It's the proudest day of my life, and that was up in Derbyshire. Got through my probation, went onto the intelligence unit, was commended for planning and organising a crack house closure. It was one of the largest ever done, being a whole block of flats. Worked on cannabis grow houses, did some really interesting work on social media when things like Bebo started to be a problem for gang usage. Then transferred to the Met on the 9th of October 2009. Was commended 3 times in my first year for it was bravery in tackling an armed suspect while still armed, fortitude at the scene of a fatal fire in a residential care home, and a further time for leadership and management, and that was a suspect who tried to throw himself off the balcony. I've had a great time being a police officer, and it's only really in the last few years that's gone downhill and changed quite substantially.
So tell me, James, when was it that you first saw the need to blow the whistle?
In terms of when I first did it, that will have been all the way back in April 2011, when I realised that there was something wrong in the statistics which had been used to rejuggle the resources of response officers in London. And I was worried that this would mean there wouldn't be enough police officers on duty if there was ever a significant event like riots or bombings or anything like that. So I reported this by the internal channels and the appropriate external channels, and then the riots happened on the 6th of August, and sure enough there weren't enough police officers on duty. The end result of that was people died, people were injured, there was £270 million worth of damage, a £100 million spend of overtime in order to correct the staffing deficit, and from that point on for me there was no going back.
Do you think forces, in your view, are deficient with their whistleblowing policies?
In my view, forces are deficient with their whistleblowing processes. There is a lot which is left to be desired in the way that forces not only write their policies, and the ACPO approach to whistleblowers has always been quite anti, really. There's also a lot of misunderstanding about what the Public Interest Disclosure Act is and what a public interest disclosure itself can be.
What do you then think forces could do to make themselves perhaps a bit more credible?
What forces need to do first is take a step back from this micromanagement of the reports that are made to them. I mean, if you look at a case like mine with the Met and the publicly available aspect of it, it took until the 8th of January, several months after I'd appeared before a select committee, for anybody to even acknowledge that there was an element of truth in what I'd said. So the approach was to bury their head in the sand.
So what do you think are the factors preventing an effective whistleblowing culture in policing, James?
Number one, as I've said, it's the understanding of what the Act is for and how it applies. There's also the attitude of senior officers, and in part this is probably due to the sort of the Levison effect, which has been quite chilling, but they like to keep things in-house, and a lot of people at senior levels may at some point have made a gain or established their own position by virtue of the fact that they've been aware of something and done nothing about it. As long as that barrier is there, it's going to be impossible for change.
Would you have a message for colleagues who are perhaps considering blowing the whistle? What advice would you give them?
What should my colleagues think about if they're going to do whistleblowing? My advice would be this: talk to your family, explain what is happening, what you are going to do, and what the likely consequences are. Because if you don't do that, you will find that it impacts upon your home life as well as what's going to happen at work. Don't ever be scared to do it, don't back down from doing it, but be ready for the fact it's going to cause you one hell of a lot of pain, and it's going to cause the people that you love pain as well. In terms of long-term plans, there's the tribunal to deal with, and I have to overcome the barrier of being someone who's stood up quite openly against their employer repeatedly, and I'm worried that that might make me unemployable. So as for what the future holds, it might be a long period of unemployment, it might be writing memoirs, it might be slinging boxes at the airport, who knows. I think the things that I'll miss most are the sound of the blues and twos going on and tyre squeal. I think Hollywood tyres is what some people call it. The jobs that you can't make up, the ridiculous things that leave you laughing, and the times when you take off your uniform, put it back in your locker and think to yourself, I'm lucky to be going home this morning.
Thank you, James. It's been great to get your insights.
Thank you, Cliff.
Whistleblowing is something that's not going to go away. It's something that has to be dealt with at all levels of the police service, from chief officers to the College of Policing and elsewhere. It's also likely to be something firmly on the agenda of MPs going forward. I'm Cliff Caswell, the editor of PoliceOracle.com, the UK's policing website.